From Washington consensus to Beijing consensus, an increasing number of Western scholars are now studying the so-called China model, the system that helped the country grow to become the world's second largest economy. Seth Kaplan is a professorial lecturer at Johns Hopkins University. He recently published an article titled Development with Chinese Characteristics. I had a chance to discuss his view about China's strategic concern for growth.
The China model is mostly thought of in the West as authoritarian state-led capitalism, and I think this is because Western experts have a very difficult time looking at the full breadth of complexity that is China. They just think it's democracy versus authoritarian government, and they make everything into this binary, so it's really limiting in terms of understanding. So the China model, for example, could also be, let's experiment with the policy first before we roll it out nationally. The China model also is lots of investment in people, lots of investment in infrastructure. I would say that's also part of the China model. The China model also, it has been go with agriculture and rural areas first and develop off where the people are and building on the country's potential strengths. So my point of my article was to lay out a 10-point vision of what the China model is. First, to understand China better, but also second, to create a model that actually is useful, that can be translated into policies for the whole developing world.
So when you read establishment media, they often portray the Chinese political system as one that is ridden with corruption, cronyism in government official selection. But in fact, it could be more complicated than that, right?
The capacity to get things done in China is without peer for most of the world, actually. Incredible capacity. And one of the key reasons for this is the nature of the cadre system, or the nature of the government bureaucracy, and certainly the upward accountability. You could say that a Western democracy has better downward accountability, pressure from below to perform. China has easily the best system for upward accountability to force officials at every level of government to achieve. And certainly one of the reasons for success is that the rewards for officials have been based on performance, and there was enormous competition between provinces, between counties within provinces, and this has made the Chinese model in terms of incentives for officials quite surpassing every other developing country in the world.
So in the paper, you pointed out that Beijing has been heavily investing in infrastructure of knowledge. How has that been impacting the Chinese society?
Government of China has consistently, from 1949, not from the reform era, but from the beginning of the foundation of the People's Republic, made a very strong emphasis first on basic education, which was from 49 forward, and then especially from the late 1990s, a very strong emphasis on higher education, research centers, and now there's a whole network with enormous investments. On the second level, Chinese families have always made a really, really strong emphasis on education, and you could argue China has, in many ways, the most competitive education market in the world, because the families compete with each other who's going to have the most educated child, because this is how we get ahead as a family.